Yeah.
And they just satisfy themselves with porn. But that's not ideal, obviously.
Why?
But because it's pretty soulless sex, isn't it? Just watching porn and masturbating. I think, it's really funny about porn, actually, because I used to have a great relationship with porn. I used to say to people all the time, like, porn is your friend, watch it with your partner. It's great for, if you've got a high sex drive and your partner doesn't, it you can satisfy yourself. It keeps your imagination, peaked. You can satisfy that sense of newness by watching porn. And now porn's moved into a really ugly stage with, there's such a concentration on aggressive acts like spitting, choking is terrible, slapping across the face. It's become very much like that. And young men are growing up to think that this is what a normal sex session is like. This is normal real life sex. It is not. Porn is nothing like real life sex. And then women look at it and go, gosh, right, okay, that's obviously what's expected of me. This is what I have to do. And it's moving into a very nasty direction.
They say unmet expectations equal unhappiness. So by setting expectations up here as like, we're going to do this for an hour and I'm going to tie you up and spit on you and choke you and you're going to make this sound and you're going to scream and you're going to tell me I'm this and you're going to say that I'm your father, whatever perverse thing it might be. Then for those unmet expectations equals unhappiness in the bedroom. You go, well, I'm going to have to go looking for something else. And
exactly. And that's what young men do because they think that's what sex is going to be about. It's not. So then they keep looking for the girls who will give them that. And then girls very quickly figure out, okay, if I want to be liked, I have to do that. I've just done a big thing on choking, and I interviewed all these young girls, and it was horrifying. It was they've been, between 58% of college students between the age of had all been choked. I think 30% of them had been asked. And I'm not talking about symbolic choking of just putting a hand on the throat, which even that freaks me out. But I'm talking about cutting off wind supply. There was one girl who told me she was 21. She'd gone out with this guy. He seemed really nice. He started choking her. She said no. She passed out. She woke up next to this guy who was asleep. He then said and then she got herself out of there and was like, oh my God, terrified. He texted her the next day and said, oh my God, babe, this sex was awesome. Let's meet up again. And she was just like, how could you possibly think that was good? And that worries me a lot. I think sex, I think, is moving in a great way in lots of ways, particularly for young women, except for things like that. I think that is terrible. So, no, you don't want to be satisfying yourself with porn. But you have to have the conversation if sex is now out of your marriage. You cannot just let it go and be the elephant in the room because exactly what you said is going to happen. You're going to leave or you're going to cheat. So you sit down with your partner and you say, listen, we really need to have a discussion about this. I love you desperately, but I miss our sex. We used to have lovely sex. I love having sex with you. You're really desirable. Can we talk about why this isn't happening anymore? Are you having the sort of, is it that the sex that we're having isn't doing it for you? What can I do to make you, want to have sex more often with me? Because I would really love to have sex with you more often. Can we have a discussion about this?
Okay, I've got friends that have tried that.
And what happened?
The partner doesn't necessarily know. It's a similar situation to the situation I described that I was in, where my partner turned around and said something, because they might not have the information themselves. They go, well, I just don't like having it. And they might not know that the responsive sex language that you talked about, and they might not know what's going on with.
Oh, I see. The partner might not know why she doesn't want to have sex.
Why she or he doesn't like having sex. And then you kind of hit a wall, don't you?
Well, that's when you educate yourself. That's when you read a few of my books to give you a bit of education. But okay, so the partner who wants sex is generally more driven. So maybe they could sexually educate themselves and say, I've been reading up about this. Perhaps it might be because of this. Can we try having sex this way? But it's all about broaching the topic. And then, depending on the reaction, I know I've, encouraged some people to have this talk and then they've got an answer which is just startling. Well, they'll say, I don't want to have sex anymore. I'm not interested in solving this. So that's it. So you just have to put up with it.
That's basically what I got.
If somebody says that to you and and you've tried on several occasions and I think that is grounds for walking out myself.
And I did.
Yeah.
And a miracle seems to have.
Yes, because then people did some soul searching. And sometimes maybe you walk out and then the person thinks, well, gosh, actually, that's not very fair. Because monogamy is all about, I pledge to only have sex with one person. Well, if that person withdraws sex, then where are you left? Apart from having solo sex and, or you have an agreement. Okay, well, if you won't have sex with me, then what are my options? My options are to satisfy myself, to cheat. Are you happy for me to seek the sex elsewhere? And lots of times people will say, yeah, actually I am. I don't want to know about it. I don't want it to be in our friendship group. And we're going to have rules about this. But, some women are more than happy for that to happen. Or some men are more than happy for that to happen. It's not just a female thing here. Men go off sex as well.
On this point of porn as well, I read something recently about the shame that it's causing in people. Like, I think the study that I read,
yeah, I think I read that too.
About 40% of men that use, that masturbate to porn report to feeling a sense of shame. And then when we think about the sort of macro where we are in sex as a society right now, there is a decline of sex, isn't there, going on, which
Absolutely.
Is quite concerning.
Yeah, there's a sex recession. And that's very much because, basically there wasn't a sex recession before social media, streaming, phones. It's all to do with that. We have too much to do. We basically just go off sex because we have other things to entertain us. Pre all that, 10:34 on a Saturday night, most couples were having sex. There was nothing else to do. That was it. We just are too, there's that going on. So we're too busy. We've got too many other things on our plate. That's the main problem with long-term couples. Then you have, I think, less face-to-face communication, which makes people quite nervous. If you haven't had sex before and you're dealing mainly with, FaceTime calls, video calls, which is what lots of young people are. When you're face to face, they get very nervous. They don't know anything about body language. They don't know how to connect, and sex becomes scary. In Japan, there's something like 30%, no, higher. I think more like 45% of people get to the age in their 30s and they're virgins. They've never even had a sexual encounter. And if you don't give your body sex, your body doesn't want sex. So they could quite happily go through life completely sexless. That's what's going to end up happening with sex. We are becoming less and less and less. And, the more we go into virtual worlds, the more, the amount of people who rely on porn for sex, who can't even be bothered going out and finding a partner because it's all too difficult. It's becoming less and less about the intimacy and more about just the getting off part.